So if you're beginning, this is how you easily do shadows and highlights. So you get your 3 points, base coat, then your wash, and then your highlight, and it'll greatly improve the look of your model. Hello, I'm BJ from Hearns, and today I'm going to be talking about shadows and highlights on a model, just to simply bring out a bit more detail and make it more three-dimensional. So I guess particularly with beginners, when you start a model, you'll follow the instructions. The instructions will tell you all the base colors to paint items. But what you'll find is if you do that, say particularly with an aircraft that's got one major base coat, it'll look pretty plain and dull in most lighting. And then there's very strong lighting to bring out all the shadows and details. What you can do is you can emphasize that by using a wash, which will give you the shadows. And then we'll do some dry brushing to bring up the highlights. And I'll just demonstrate that on a couple of bits of an engine part I have here. So here's the 2 pieces I've got just to show you. Now this is cut straight from the sprue, so you'll see that that's a raw plastic finish. And then, because I'm going to be brush painting these, I've just put a primer onto this one here. So that's a light coat of spray primer. Now the idea of the primer, you'll notice that it doesn't have the shine anymore, because what it's doing is it's putting a matte finish on the top. And what we want is that rough finish so that when brush goes over the top, it picks up the paint very well. So that's the one I'm going to be showing you what I'm going to do. So I'll just do a little bit first. So just imagine you just primed it. I'll get my brushes here. So I'm just using some broad brushes to cover some larger area. I've got some acrylic paint here, just white and black just for demonstration. I'll make a medium grey just to do the base coat, just to replicate. Okay, that's probably a bit darker than I like, so I'll put in a bit more white. So when you're mixing, you usually start with more of the lighter colour than the darker, because the darker will overpower. So that's looking pretty good for a mid-tone. Just get a bit of water in there to make it a bit more brushable, because the thinner paint generally flows easier. Okay, so let's just do half of it. So I'll put it over some rough areas too, just to emphasize things. Alright, so I'm just brush painting across the top. And this is just a base coat. So imagine the instructions on your kit just said paint this a medium grey. So that's a medium grey going on top. Now I'll give it a little bit of time to dry. And if you have a closer look at that, you'll notice that it's not quite dry yet, but it is pretty basic. So you can't really see the fine wire detail, you can't see the indentations and the where there would normally be some shadows. Okay, so we'll be back in a sec, and I'll go to the next step after this, which is the wash. So wash comes in after the base coat. So the big grey that I mixed up before. So you can see, that's only one coat, so it's a bit patchy, but it doesn't matter what we're going to do now, just to give you a demonstration. So next step is going to be the wash, and I'm going to be using this Tamiya panel liner wash. This is actually an oil base, so if you remember that I used an acrylic on this, and then I'm going to use an enamel base. Now there's water-based ones available as well, so they work differently. The water-based ones, when you put them on, you'll need to wipe them off or manipulate them when they're still wet. With these oil-based ones, once they're dry, you can still manipulate them with enamel thinner, which is what I'll do in a second. Okay, so these got a brush in them. I'll just apply a little bit here. Just concentrate on that there. And you'll notice that as I brush across, the wash will naturally collect in all the crevices. Okay, so if we do that. Now even now you can see how it's already highlighting the areas of shadow and giving it this much more 3D effect. Now you can also see that as I've painted over everything, you don't have to paint it over everything, you can just concentrate on certain areas. It will darken everything. Now you can apply more later if you like. Now what I've done here is quite a heavy coat, just to give you an idea. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some of it as well before I do the highlighting stage. Okay, so that's the wash applied. So parts of the exhaust, and you can see the ignition wire type areas, and also along the sides of where the cylinders will be, they're starting to become much more pronounced. That's just from a wash. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll be back, and then we'll manipulate the wash, and then we're going to do the highlighting. Okay, so back in a sec. Okay, so there's the wash that's been dried. You'll notice that it's softened off a bit, but it has entered all the crevices and it's made them darker. So that's your shadow tone. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wipe off some of that because it's a little bit too much, and we'll get some excess off, and I'll show you how to replicate direction of light. Okay, so let's get this brush over here. Use this little one here. Okay, so because we used a enamel thinner, we're going to use an enamel wash. We're going to use enamel thinner. Okay, so we'll just dip our brush in there. You don't need a lot because we just need to coat the brush because we want to manipulate it. If you use too much, it's just going to turn everything all slushy. Okay, so just imagine that the engine's going to be like this and the light's going to travel through the top. Then obviously the parts on the top are going to be lighter than the parts on the bottom. So when you want to take it off, you take it off from this angle here. Okay, so we're just wetting it up here. You notice that it's lightening up. So I'm moving oil in one direction. A bit more. Okay, so I'm going to wipe bits off like this as well. Use a cotton wool bud. Use a bit of tissue. You don't want anything that's too linty though. Okay, so that's just wiping some of it away. Okay, so you'll notice that it's still staining the original grey, but the definitions are a little bit softer. And when you put on the highlights are going to give a much harsher look and bring up all the reflective areas. Okay, so we just do that. Okay, so you can see the difference there. I've just wiped off some of the sections of it. That's a great thing about using oil-based paints or enamels with these washes, because you can just easily manipulate them from here. I mean, if you still thought that was a bit too dark, you can still wipe off a bit more with a cotton wool bud with a slight amount of thinner in it. But we're just going to continue on, and I'll show you how we get to the highlighting stage. So I'm just going to quickly mix some white to be the full highlight. Now it's good to use a brush, and I tend to like to use flat brushes because you can go across a larger area and be very gentle. Now with dry brushing is simply that. We're going to apply the white to this and then wipe off as much excess as possible so that you're only rubbing a little bit across the surface. So do this like so. So you see how the white's in the brush there. Going to get rid of as much as possible. So I just wipe it across here. So that's looks dry, but it's got a slight amount of white in it. Now as I rub it across the top, so again we're doing the light coming from this way, so we're going to approach it from this angle. If I do this, just a gentle touch across the top. It's already brought out definition of that corner. Now if I continue down, so bring out all the definition. So you've got the leads coming out and across here. On the bottom of this crankcase part. And you even start getting all the rivets coming through. And because it's very gentle, you can just take your time with this and keep building the highlights until you're happy with them. So I'll just add a little bit more across here. Okay, so that's after my first pass with the highlight. So basically you have three tones now. You have your base tone that we applied, which was a mid-grey, and then we've got the shadows with the black wash, and now we've got the light highlights with the white. And that's how you're getting your three-dimensional effect and getting your scale model to look more realistic. So I might just finish off a little bit more, because with that, if you want certain areas to be a bit lighter, like the leads, okay, so we'll concentrate on the leads a bit more. Slide them brighter highlight again. And that's like that. Okay, so if you view that, we'll view it from like that. So imagine the light coming down this angle here from the top. So with the leads all highlighted. And you can work more with that if you like, depending on the balance you want. Because ultimately, to get a realistic effect, you want all the way from white all the way to black. So black being, of course, areas where no light touches, and then white being the highest highlight. And in a grey tone, that's very easy to understand. And then, of course, you can put that with all different colours. So obviously, if you started with blue, then you got your darkest, almost black blue, and then the highlights would be light blue to pure white for your ultimate highlight. So there you go. So I hope you get a better understanding of how you can easily enhance your models. So if you're beginning, this is how you easily do shadows and highlights. So you get your 3 points, base coat, then your wash, and then your highlight, and it'll greatly improve the look of your model. So if you've got any questions, of course, leave them in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.